Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm here without Whiskey. He is in his Edinburgh, which is the word for his kennel, or going to be the word for his kennel. This is his roadmap to success. So he is really a great dog. He got rescued through Tasia Blue. He was, I think, a stray dog. Really, his problems are he likes to mouth and jump up on guests. He likes to jump the fence. We're going to talk about a little tip for that. And then, what else? What is the main thing? Those are the main things you really want to work on, right? Okay, so we started off, let's talk about the fence before I forget. So basically, I have a video. I'm going to try to link it in this. If you're watching this video and the page that this is on doesn't have a link to it, remind me and I'll add it in there. So if you're watching this in Dog Problems, look for the one where it's talking about raising the fence or a fence, and there'll be a link. Basically, go to Lowe's or Home Depot. You get the temporary fencing, the green stuff. It's either 2 feet or 4 feet tall. Comes in a 50-yard roll. Get posts. Now, you have to keep these posts about every 2 feet. If you get it too big, that fencing is not very rigid. The dogs can actually knock it over. So what you do is, since it's wintertime, you won't probably be able to get in the ground. I would just take a ton of like 12-inch zip ties, put the post against the post of the chain link fence and zip it. So each post maybe has like about 10 zip ties to really keep it in there. And then I would do one in the middle of every post of the, I think it's like 10 feet sections of the chain link fence. So once you get the post and the posts are all on the inside of the fence, then you get this fencing and you overlap it. So this is the chain link fence. I would overlap it from here to here, going the length of the fence. So essentially you can take a 4-foot fence and make it like a 6-foot or an 8-foot fence. So get the posts that are about 8 feet tall. You'll probably, well, you can also get 6 feet tall for what you're doing now, but I'd probably go 8 feet. And when you get to the spring, there'll probably be a little time before the fence people come over and do it, and that way you can sink those down in there. But the zip ties will probably work. Make sure with the zip ties, you cut the end of the zip ties. A lot of times dogs will see those and start chewing on them, and they can start pulling and popping them off. And so I try to make the zip ties on the outside of the fence, the little tassel. All right, let me see. That I would probably, it comes at 50 yards, I'd probably just do the section that he's doing, that he's jumping the most, but if he jumps somewhere else, then I do the whole thing. Better safe than sorry. Like I said, it's a self-rewarding behavior. Now, for when guests come in, he did better, I'm guessing, when I came in with the jumping. He didn't do the jumping until I got to landing it. Is that better? So what I did is I did the delayed entry, and it's hard to do this time of year when it's cold. Basically, make sure you don't have the interior door closed, or open, excuse me. Make sure it's closed so he can't see the person's coming. And so then basically you have the person come to the door, they ring the doorbell and knock. You go open the interior door, leave the exterior door locked. And I would tell the person either put their foot up and brace it or make sure you lock it. And then basically as soon as Whiskey would jump up, I just sat there. As soon as he jumped down, I reached for the handle and I jiggled. That caused him to jump up and I pull my hand back down. And I did this back and forth, and I was out there for about 2 minutes. He started getting, less and less excited about it. He's like, this guy teasing me or what? Pretty much. So I want him to not be overexcited. So eventually when it was calm enough, I opened the door and I kind of let him have a handful of treats, and I closed the door. Then I threw a couple treats on the ground. Then I came inside. Throwing treats on the ground is a good way to proactively prevent the dog from jumping up. But the best way to do this is set the dog up for success. Exercising the dog before the people come in is a better way of doing this than being reactive when he jumps up on people. So let me see. Now I also went over some hand targeting. If I forget to put it on this page, message me. Hand targeting is, and I'll just go through it real quick. What I do is I want to use a flashing motion, and you want to chop on either side of your dog's face. So you're chopping at nose level, here or here. The progression is turn, then lean, then one step, then multiple steps. So what I do is I chop my hand like this, and right next to here, and the dog turns, and as soon as he touches his nose to my hand, I say, good, then I put a treat here. This hand, once I chop it, it's frozen. Dog touches his nose to it, then I take a treat and I put it on that hand, but I'm saying good when he noses it. And then I pull back and then I chop on this side of the face. And then the dog, and at first I'm chopping about like 2 inches away, then 3 inches, eventually getting further and further away. That's why I turn, lean, step, and steps. Eventually we'll be able to go like this when he's like at your fireplace, go like this, and he runs over and touches his nose there, then you put the treat there. This is another exercise you can do when guests come over. You can give him a handful of treats. When instead of him jumping up, they can go touch, take a couple steps, touch, take a couple steps. So again, we're blocking the old unwanted behavior and we're replacing it with touching his nose to my hand. And if you practice this a lot at home, eventually you get to the point where you can go touch or target or boop. Those are usually the 3 things that people usually say. So say boop, and then he comes over and touches his nose to my hand, then I put the treat. We say the marker word when we're teaching a dog to let him know that was the action that I wanted. So now when guests come over, we've exercised him first. I'm going to talk about some creative forms of exercise in a sec. And then when the guests come in, they do the delayed entry, so he's not super crescendo energy. And when they finally come inside, they come inside and they do it, boop, he touches here, we take a couple steps, boop, touches here. So instead of jumping up, he's knowing that the human's gonna do something or ask something for me that's gonna get me a reward. Now, what are some creative ways of exercising? The Guardian currently is already feeding out of a snuffle mat, which is awesome. There are other things we can do as well. She's got some treat dispensing toys. I'd like you to get an Omega Paw Tricky Treat Ball. The large one if you can find, but the mediums are easier to find on Amazon or Chewy. Chewy's easier to find the large ones. Feed him one of his meals out of one of those. I would also get, let me see. You could also get, you use a lick mat. You can use Kongs filled with peanut butter. In his case, you might want to use you can use the yogurt, but Stewart's freeze-dried beef liver. You can get those on Amazon and Chewy. I actually have a little bit of it right here. We'll test this before I leave. But basically, it's a chunk. It's actually liver. It's freeze-dried, and I'll put this up at the camera. You see here at the bottom, it's got some dust. So what you could do is take that dust, put peanut butter down on the lick mat, then crumple this up or put the dust on top of it. You're kind of lacing the top of that. That'll make that peanut butter a lot more appealing for him. Peanut butter I find works a little bit better than yogurt. Yogurt, once it gets to a certain temperature, they get it really quickly. The peanut butter really sticks to those lick mats and makes it take a little bit longer. Excuse me, I have to do a Marco Rubio. Okay, so the Guardian already does a little bit of a find it. Scent games, I would have you Google scent games. There's a lot of versions of it. So you can find a bait lure that you hide. Don't be worried if it talks about a cadaver. You don't have to have a dead animal in your house to do scent games. Let me see, what else? On walks, the Guardian does a great job. She lets the dog sniff on walks, which a lot of people don't do, but dogs burn more energy on a walk by sniffing than walking. One of the things you might want to consider is getting a Doggie Backpack. The Doggie Backpack is a harness that has two pockets like here, kind of like saddlebags. And if you get those, you can put a couple bottles of water in each side. Now the dog is carrying more weight. That makes the walk more efficient. It's also doing a job, which often prevents it from being so reactive side to side. So those are other nice things you can do. I'd like you to, for feeding, right now he kind of goes, if he doesn't eat, the Guardian leaves it there. So I'd like to put the food down, call him over to eat it, and come up with a fun word, call it like meatball, lasagna, pork chop. So you come over, and if you know he's gonna eat, say pork chop, and then he starts eating. Remember, the order is the cue or the command word first, the dog's action follows it, and then the dog gets a reward or a reinforcer last. That's the order it needs to be. So if you know the dog will do something, like if I'm gonna throw the treat, I can say, find it as I throw it, because I know he's gonna go get it. So it's okay to use a cue there. If I don't know the dog can do it, that's when I use the marker word. So for feeding, you know the dog's probably gonna get it. So you just basically say lasagna and the dog goes and eats its food. Now, if he goes over and sniffs it and he walks away, pick up that snuffle mat, put it up. I actually prefer to pick it up and dump all the food out of it if it's a bowl. But for a snuffle mat, just pick the snuffle mat up, put it up, and make sure you put it somewhere he can't get, nothing on the counter. And then he doesn't eat again until the next meal. I feed 3 times a day. His weight is fine. But we want to make sure that when we put the food down, he eats. That way he understands that that's, you're providing it. So it's just kind of one of those little things you can do that helps create a healthy leader-follower dynamic. Playing Tug Game is a great one. The Guardian's already doing that. But again, I would incorporate a time in, time out. So I would have the dog sit, time in, and then he grabs it and you wrestle. Then you pull out a treat when you're still wrestling with one hand and hold up to his nose. I was saying drop it. You could say time out, and he lets go. You put it in his mouth and then pull it back. Have him sit there, wait for his energy to come down. Energy to let down to a certain level. Then I would say time in, and then he goes back and tugging it. Time that so you know how long he needs. We also went over the Doggy Stairmaster. I'm not going to go over the details of that. I think you understand how to do it, but some people at home don't know. They use it for inappropriate, for dogs that shouldn't be doing it. Make sure you do check with your vet on that. And if you have any dog has any sort of mobility issues or something like that that starts because that stopped doing the activity, talk to your vet. Make sure your vet gives it a green light. Let me see. If you can get an Omega Tricky Trainer, Omega Treat Ball, and 2 or 3 other puzzle games, those are great ways to preoccupy the dog. So what we want to do is come up with kind of a rhythm or a formula for the human. So I'd recommend starting a exercise journal. So write a date at the top, a piece of paper each day, write the date at the top, the time that you woke up. He needs 20 minutes of petting before we get started. And then after that, we maybe do the Doggy Stairmaster. for like, and just count the number of up downs that you get. And then after that, you go and shower, do your thing while he's recovering. When he gets done, we feed him out of the snuffle mat. That makes him work for his, and maybe half of the snuffle mat, half of the treat ball or other deals. So now he had to work for his food. He just woke up, but now within a half an hour, he's ready to get some rest again. You go ahead and get working on your day. Remember, if you're going to have guests come over or you have a project or something you need him to be paying attention to, get him some exercise ahead of time. Instead, and I would get the big bag of the Tricky Trainers if you can, a 14-ounce bag. And the chicken liver, and you want to make sure it's soft and chewy, not the crunchy ones. And then remember, dog exercises every 2 to 4 hours. So the exercise journal, we write down the time and how many up downs the stairs, time and how long we did the tug of war, the time, the number of fetches, the length of the walk, or whatever it is. And then if he gets mouthy or barky or whimpery or whiny, you write down the time and what was going on, what he was doing. And then at the end of the day, you give him a letter grade and put your meals in there as well as anything else that's really noteworthy behavioral wise. Then at the end of the day, give him a letter grade, A through F. If it's anything other than an A, then the next day maybe do a couple more repetitions for each exercise. Or if it's really low grade, I might throw an extra exercise in and decrease the time between that exercise or the mental stimulation. You want to get really a balance between physical exercise and mental stimulation. Some of them cross over, like a sniff walk is exercise and mental stimulation. But if we're doing this on again, off again, and getting some puzzles and things like that, maybe we do tug of war twice a day. We do the Doggy Stairmaster twice a day. We feed out of snuffle mats, and then we use an Omega Paw treat ball. We play a game of fetch, and we go for a walk. That's like 7 or 8 different things that we can do, sprinkled every 1, 2, or 3 hours. That's going to make him more amicable, and he won't practice that behavior. Remember, for dog behavior modification, we want to block the old behavior for like 2.5 to 3 months while we help the dog practice a lot of the new behavior, the desired behavior. And after a while, the way that the brain works, the neurons start going to the new behavior, and the dog just kind of forgets about doing the old one. Like for counter surfing, we want to make sure there's nothing on the counter, because he's going to jump up at times that he just jumps up and there's nothing there. We don't look at that as successful for him, but he was still probing. So if every time he probes for like 20, 30, 100 times, every dog's number is different, there's never anything there, then I'm going to stop doing that. I would get yourself a good dog bed here. One of the rules would be he shouldn't be within 7 feet of you eating. So remember, get an empty plate, sit down where you normally eat, grab a fork, but there's no food on it. As soon as he comes over to you, throw the treat on the dog bed, and then call it Edinburgh or whatever you want to say for the name of the dog bed. So you throw it on the dog bed, make sure white, light cream, or light gray. He runs over the dog bed and gets it. Then you kind of take your utensil on the plate again, comes over to you, throw the treat. So you just kind of throw the treat back and back over and over. Eventually he'll sit and lay down because there's no food on your plate and the treats are over there. And eventually then you can start doing it where you have a little snack that's something that's not a meat related snack with not a lot of smell, and then work your way up to an actual meal, and he stays there on the dog bed while you eat your food. Also, shouldn't be allowed in the kitchen when you're preparing food. Even if they're not actively begging, it's just inappropriate for them to be close. I'd also like you to incorporate Premax whenever possible. Remember, Premax is a less desirable behavior, earns me a more desirable behavior. He already does it for the door. He sits to go, asks to go outside. But if you're playing fetch, sit. Only after you sit will I throw the ball for you. Sit before I'm preparing your food. Sit before I'm putting your food down. Sit before I open the door of a car, or whatever it is. So remember, the more that you ask him to do something first before he gets what he wants, the more he's motivated to do the thing that you want. We also talked about petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is petting your dog for a reason. So he comes up, he's very nudgy. He likes to nudge, and he's kind of demanding attention. So when he does that, tell him only one time to sit or to lie down. Don't practice shake anymore. If he sits or lays down within that 2-second window, whenever possible, try to pet him in this oval area, under the chin, on either shoulder, or on the chest. Try to avoid reaching over him. And if he does it within 2 seconds, then I reach over and pet him. And don't just give him like a little pet. Make sure you pet him. Give him a lengthy pet. And if he comes back and does it a minute later, another minute, he's probably saying, I need some exercise or some stimulation again. A lick mat, a Kong, whatever it is. If he doesn't do what you want, the first and only time you say it within 2 seconds, lean back. Go back to watching TV. Check some emails on your phone. Read a book. Do something else. Let him know, I'm not mad at you. I'm not going to correct you. There's no chastisement. There's no punishment. You just don't get what you want. But as soon as you sit, boy, I'm just giving that all that affection. After a while, he'll start sitting to prepay and ask for that attention. Now, we went over marker words earlier, and I want the guardian to use the marker words for capturing, a lot of trainers call it. I used to call it passive training, which is basically waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you the behavior, marking it by saying the marker word, and then giving the dog some affection afterwards. I usually don't give treats for capturing or passive training, but you can if you want. I usually do it just with affection. So every time he comes to me, I'd say good and then pet him. Every time he sits, I'd say good and pet him. Every time he lays down, good and pet him. He brings you a toy, good and pet him. But the key, the best way to do it is to anticipate. So let's say Whiskey's on the dog bed over there at the far side of the room. He gets up, I know he's coming to me. Come! Well, he's already coming anyways. And then I pet him when he gets here. Remember, the cue comes, then the action, and then the dog is rewarded. So you want to try to anticipate. He's coming over to you, you know he's going to sit down, so he comes over to you, sit right as he's across to do it, and then you start petting him. So it takes a little bit of anticipation. But in the first, just use the marker word. And remember to use that marker word for training. So if you're trying to teach him to roll over, what I do is I teach dogs to lay down first, and then I want to teach them to move their head over to the side. We call that shaping. So at first, I can't say roll over because he doesn't know the whole command. So as soon as I lure him over here, I say good, and then I pop the tree in his mouth. Good, I pop the tree in his mouth. After a while, it's easy for me to get him to turn his head, and then I can get him to drop his shoulder and all the other steps that go through teaching him to roll over or play dead or whatever it is. So the marker word is really powerful. Well, I would say good dog after the dog did the act, and the action for that is wrong. Remember, the marker comes the instant the dog does what you want, unless it's elongated. So if I want the dog to stay on the dog bed, at first I would throw the treat, and as soon as he gets on the dog bed, I would say good. Well, then eventually I might have, and eventually the transition would be the dog goes to the dog bed, and I say good, then I give it a treat. Then I would have it go to the dog bed, and then it goes to the dog bed. I say dog bed. He goes there, and I wait 1 second, then say good and give him the treat. Then after practice that a couple more times, I would say dog bed name. He goes over there, 1, 2, 3, and I say good. So at that point, you're going to start marking at the end or the apex of whatever the activity, if it's delayed. Remember to keep your and that's also something the guardian does a good job of training him. He's such a smart dog. But training is a great way to burn energy if he's learning new tricks. Doing his existing tricks, that's fine, but it's not as much of a burning energy. Kind of like for working out, lifting weights burns exercise energy the whole time. Aerobic exercise only burns it while you're doing it. So when he's doing it, if he knows the exercise, that's more the aerobic. If you're teaching him, that's more the weight training, and that's going to burn more energy for him. So I would try to get 1 or 2 training repetitions, exercises throughout the day. Make sure they're 1, 2, 3 minutes maximum. Always end on a good one. Remember, the last repetition they do is what they're going to remember the most frequently or most prominently. So if you got frustrated, he's going to remember you got mad last time I didn't roll over, so I don't want to practice that game again. Always end on a good one. Let me think, what else? Is there anything else you want me to go over?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, there's going to be times you're going to catch yourself petting at the wrong time or forgetting to mark. That's okay. Give yourself a break. So if you do that, just make an effort to, okay, well, I missed that one. I'm going to wait for him to do the next anything that I want. So you see, he goes over there and he's going to grab the rope. Maybe you call that rope licorice because it looks like a licorice. So he's about to grab it. You say, licorice. Now, remember, the inflection matters. So he goes to grab the rope and he's like, licorice! He's going to stop what he's doing and come over to me. So I try to avoid the excited talk. He goes over and get it, licorice, and then holding my hand like that, he comes over to me, and then I'm just going to pet him. And so, or I could say yes when he comes, and you can use a marker word and the cue word at the same time, but the idea is eventually to transition just to using the cue word only. The focus exercise in the video above this one, try to practice that 3 or more times a day. Dogs really get bored with that exercise. By the time I call you in a week, you should be up to that 15-second focus. Now, he did better for that one when he was laying down on the ground, so by the time he's seeing this, you should be already accomplished. But make sure, so practice that one when he's down on the ground, because that way he has to look up intentionally. After about 5 seconds of not looking, give a low the whole time. And then as soon as he looks at you, mark, good, boom, boom. And the hand targeting, like I said, if you don't, I'll show you how to do that as soon as we get done with this video. But practice that one as well, and that way you can, when your guests come in, you can give them a handful of treats, and they can walk into your house doing the hand targeting. Now he's touching his hands to you instead of jumping up on the guests, because why would I jump up here when the treats are down here in my hand? All right, well, this is Whiskey's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.